We got everyone that we were waiting for from upstairs, so we're gonna get started. So my name is Jeff Molesca, if you don't know who I am. I am filling in for Bob Luck, who's the president. He's in Italy. We're all very jealous of him. He's there for an extended period, so you might see me twice next month as well. I believe he did, yes. Yeah, I haven't heard any fishing stories yet, but he's there. I'm filling in. I'm the vice president on the board. I've been with on the board for the last 2 years. Before we get started, I just have a few announcements, and I think you've been kind of bombarded with emails from us recently. You probably got 2 or 3 over the last week, but just announce some quick upcoming events. So on December 4th, we have our winter fish camp at Whitewater State Park. I think last time we checked, we had about 20 people signed up, but you can find details and registration on the events page on the website. It's just going to be a 1-day event. It's Saturday only. It's a bring your own lunch, and we will provide warm beverages, I believe, on that. They're going to be.
This is Eve. I'm there if you want me to explain a little bit, but you did okay.
Oh, go ahead.
Okay, sorry, I just checked in my hotel and I had to check in. So basically, it's going to be a 1-day event. Starts at 10 a.m. So we'll have a speaker starting at 10:30. Her name is Monta Hayner. She's a guide in the Preston area. So she will have a presentation for us, half hour. It will be about fishing in winter, so it's very pertinent to what we'll be doing. And at 11 a.m. for the folks that need some training, they never fly fish before, they would like to learn. So we'll have some instructor that will help people to learn how to fly fish. So we'll have explanation there. So for the folks coming and wants to learn how to fish, they don't have the waders, they don't have the boots, they don't have a fly rod. We'll provide that, so no problem. And in the afternoon, we'll do some fishing. We'll do some fishing on the water. And for the folks that I know how to fish, I don't need the instruction. You can go fish right away. So we'll have some fly tying during the day as well. And we'll have some door prizes as well. So that would be fun. So we'll do it the 1 day. And we'll have some water, coffee, we'll have some hot chocolate. So we want the folks to bring their lunch because of COVID and so forth. We want to avoid sharing food and so forth. So maybe next year we'll do it differently, but that's how we'll do it this year.
Perfect. Thank you. All right. After the winter fish camp on December 11th, which is the following Saturday, there is a buckthorn cut on Eagle Creek. And that's from 9 to noon. I have no idea how many people are attending, but there should be info on the events page again on the website. And if you want more info or want to get involved, you can just email our general info at twincitiestu.org email, and we can get you connected with the people in charge of that. And then the last announcement is the next chapter meeting. That's December 28th. So despite Christmas, we're still going to do a chapter meeting. We'll be in person and via Zoom, but there's going to be a change in venue. We are going to be at Forgotten Star Brewing in Fridley. So Google that. It'll tell you what the address is. I don't have it in front of me, but that will be, we'll make sure we announce that a few times so people know where that's going to be. They will have a food truck available. I can't tell you which food truck it's going to be, but there's food and beer available there. And then you got an email, I believe it was yesterday. We're looking for candidates for our board of directors for 2022. It's a 3-year term. All you got to do is submit a nominations form, again, available on our website. And it should have been attached to that email you received. That's got to be in by December 22nd. And then you have to, or if you don't have to, but it's encouraged that you attend the annual meeting, which is going to be the last Tuesday in January, which I believe is the 26th, 25th, 26th. I don't have that off the top of my head, but then you can give a quick candidate statement, and we'll put your candidate statement up on the website too before that. So looking for a few spots to be filled there. I think we have 4 openings total, so encourage anyone who's interested to apply. And then lastly, anyone who's on Zoom and didn't hear this before, if you attend the meeting tonight, you're eligible for a drawing for a fly box tied by Paul Johnson. It's like, I think 24 flies. So just make sure your name in the meeting reflects first and last name, so we can make sure we figure out who all the participants in the meeting are. I just want to make sure that we're drawn from everyone who is here. So, and if you are in person here and have not signed the list over there, please do so on your way out, because we'll compile that list, the list of people who are here, and then we'll draw after the meeting, and we'll get in touch via email with whoever the winner is, and we'll email that out. So enough announcements. We are talking about DARE tonight, the Driftless Area Restoration effort, and our speaker is Jeff Hastings. Jeff has been the project manager of the Trout Unlimited Driftless Area Restoration effort for the past 15 years. Before he worked with Trout Unlimited, he spent 25 years managing county land and water conservation departments. He attended the College of Natural Resources at the University of Wisconsin, and his current duties for Trout Unlimited are managing a small staff of conservationists and working with partners to accelerate cold water improvement projects in the Driftless. So without further ado, I'm going to turn this over to Jeff. The only thing we would ask is save your questions until the end. If you're participating via Zoom, please put all your questions in the comments, and I'll sort of filter through them and then ask Jeff them at the end. And then if we're in person, we'll open that up at the end for comments and get those to Jeff. So Jeff, if you're ready, go ahead and take it.
Thanks, Jeff. I appreciate the opportunity to talk tonight. I think it's been about probably about 12 years since I've had a chance to talk to the Twin Cities chapter. Just after we started the project, I think I came up there, but it's nice to be able to talk from the house here. I've got both my boys came home tonight. We've got a Christmas tree business here, and we're going to cut about 100 Christmas trees tomorrow for pre-cuts, and we've got about 1,000 trees that we'll be offering to sell on Friday. So it's a busy time of the year for us, and being able to do this by Zoom makes it really easy to do for me. So I appreciate that. I'm going to hopefully share my screen here with you, and we'll give it a shot here. Jeff, you'll have to let me know if this works, but from the beginning, there we go. Does that work, Jeff?
We're not seeing it yet. Nope.
Still not seeing it?
Nope.
What are you just seeing the screen we started with?
We just see you.
You just see me. Oh, that's too bad. That's unfortunate. Jeff and I actually practiced this a little bit today. He took a few minutes because I've got multiple screens here, and I was going to do multiple formats here. So I'm going to just try something real quick here to see if I can get us on track here. Oh. Okay. Share screen. Still just see me?
Still just see you. Oh, there we go. Yep.
Okay. Are you seeing this from the very beginning, or are you seeing the slides off to the side?
We see the slides off to the side.
Yeah, I think we'll just live with it if it's okay with you.
Works for us. Yep.
Yeah. All right. So the Driftless Area is a 4-state project area. It's about 27,000 square miles. It's been a heart of a lot of restoration work over the years, from the states to the TU chapters. But it's been a while for the national office to recognize the significance of this stream. I'm the project manager. I work closely with John Mancheski with the Minnesota TU, obviously. Recently, we hired a Dustin Hoffman, not the actor, but a young guy that we hired from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service to work with these Minnesota projects in the southeast part. Dustin is fairly new to the job, but he's very enthusiastic and was hired specifically to work on the Lessard Sand projects in southeast Minnesota. You know, obviously we've done a lot of work down at Minnesota TU's done a lot of work in southeast Minnesota. I've got 40 miles on this slide, but I think it's probably closer to 50 or 60 miles. And Dustin's hit the road looking at following up on the maintenance. In the future, we hope to have him doing much more of the coordination and outreach with the chapters, working with the Twin Cities chapter, for example, on putting together some lunkers or working on invasives. So look forward to being contacted by Dustin, and maybe sometime we can work with Dustin to have a presentation. So this is really why TU National has got recognizes this area's significance. We're looking at over 600 cold water streams, greater than, this is 4,000 miles, but I've heard upwards of 5,000 miles. Unfortunately, not all of them look like that little picture on the right, bottom right. Our task is to increase the capacity of groups to do stream restoration projects. We have a full-time stream restoration specialist on staff, Paul Cron, but the area is large, 5,000 miles, and really for us to help pick up the pace in the Driftless, it's all about building partnerships and helping groups like Minnesota TU get more involved in projects. Early on, we had these workshops in Westby, like the picture you see here, where we bring in chapters, state agencies, county field staff, and we'd show them how to put together projects. And once a chapter knew how to put a project together, they really took off. We saw like the Aldo Leopold chapter did very little projects, and after a couple of workshops, they were putting a mile of stream restoration together a year. The North chapter down here in Southwest Wisconsin is a perfect example. I think they do a little over a mile a year. They use farm bill dollars, money from the government, federal government, from the Natural Resources Conservation Service, working with a landowner to pay for about 50 to 75% of the cost. And then they raise the other 25% to pull the project off. Building capacity of our field offices, like the soil conservation or the Natural Resources Conservation Service, the land conservation departments, you call them soil and water conservation districts in Minnesota, showing the staff how to put these projects together. Conservationists are great at promoting and working with landowners on projects that they're familiar with, and stream restoration is not typically one of those areas that their expertise. So we had a number of field days and continue to have field days and invite staff out to see how these practices go in place. Contractors workshops, contractors are the same thing. We've developed several good contractors in Minnesota, but some of them did not know how to bid on how to put a lunker structure in, or a Vortex Weir, or stream bank stabilization. So we're constantly working with contractors, sometimes one-on-one, to show them how this work is done. We've also had a Driftless Symposium, which has been great. It's always been in February. I think we've pulled off about 14 of these events last year because of COVID, and unfortunately this year because of COVID, we will not have it in person. We're hoping to have a Zoom meeting, but it's basically getting the 4 states together. Anybody that's doing stream restoration we showcase recent projects. We talk about the science. We talk about anything that's involved with riparian management. And these have been great workshops. Now, because it's going to be online this year, you know, it might be more accessible for a lot of volunteers. There'll be no cost. So we'll keep you appraised of when we're going to have it, but it'll be sometime in February. And we'll probably have at least 6 speakers talking on anything from genetics to stream restoration to the science that goes into these projects. So look forward to seeing that and hopefully getting you involved with that. Having it online may make it more accessible and something we may want to do in the future besides having the one in person. I do enjoy having it in person. I think the Twin Cities has gotten involved with our water quality monitoring our phone app. Last couple of years, we worked with a private company and Kent Johnson with a Cap to Wish to get the information out on this Driftless water quality app. If you're on a stream and volunteering to do this kind of work, you can download this information to your phone, the test strips, and upload it to your phone, and we'll keep this information. John and Dusty and I were talking about this might be something that we in the future. You can also take pictures of the landscape as you go, and if you come across a eroding bank or something like this, it might be a way for us to communicate with volunteers and track our projects and help us with our maintenance. Bob wanted me to give a little bit of overview of TUDARE and kind of what we're all about and how we fit in big picture wise. Like I said, we're in the forest, working in all 4 states. In Minnesota, we've got the Lessard Sam's dollars that we work with Minnesota TU to try to help to get those dollars out the door. And so John and I are talking quite often on those projects. In Wisconsin, we work a lot with Farm Bill dollars, federal Farm Bill dollars, and chapters and landowners to do projects. And Iowa's kind of a mix. I was in Iowa Monday on North Bear Creek, and we're going to be working with a landowner. He's going to sign up for the federal Farm Bill dollars, and then we're going to use chapter dollars to cover his share to do the project down there. So it kind of varies from state to state on how we increase the capacity of groups to do stream restoration. Now I want to talk a little bit about stream restoration, the work we do, you know, how it's evolved, you know, what problems we've come into, how it's changed over the 40 years that I've worked with stream restoration projects. But when you talk about stream restoration, you have to really go back to see really what the degradation is, what the water quality problem is, you know, what we're trying to do. May be hard for you to see those in the audience, but I've kind of drawn a yellow line across about 2 feet up off the surface of the water. That's probably where the original topsoil layer was prior to settlement in the Driftless area. And I often give this talk and take students out on the land when we're doing a project and tell them they're standing on 5 to 6 feet of sediment that was washed off the ridge tops down to the valley floor. And it's really pretty hard I think for most people to believe that until you've seen some of the pictures that were taken back in the 1930s when the Natural Resources Conservation Service started the first large-scale watershed project in the nation right here in the Driftless, actually 7 miles from where I'm sitting tonight down in the Coon Creek watershed. But then you can see the gully erosion and how massive amount of sediment or soil that was washed off these ridge tops and these gullies that came down into these valley floors. And then it's not so hard to believe that some of our valley floors have 6, 8, 10 feet of sediment. They actually did, even as that Coon Creek watershed project started back in the 30s, they did some early stream restoration work. They were rich in labor and not equipment. So a lot of the projects were willow type plantings, quarried rock, and things like this to try to stabilize those banks. So here's a picture, and I always like this picture because, you know, we talk about stream restoration, and really, I mean, we get into this big debate. Are we restoring? Are we enhancing? So pre-settlement, the top schematic there shows a low wet prairie sedge meadow bottom. Look at the depth of that stream. It's a narrow stream. Brook trout thrived at this time in era. And then you see the post settlement, and then you see that cultural sediment that was deposited on that valley floor. And this is probably looking pretty conservative as I look at this map here, but it's often quite a bit more than half of the sediment on that valley floor has come off the ridge tops. And so a true restoration picture would be what you see down below. Then would be to try to remove all that cultural sediment and get it back to pre-settlement, and let that stream come back and carve a narrow stream in depth, create that depth and natural overhead cover. Now we've seen some projects in the driftless like this. This was a project down in on the south branch of the Pecatonica. The Nature Conservancy had access to the whole valley bottom floor. They removed literally hundreds and hundreds, thousands of cubic yards of sediment off that valley floor. If you figure 12 cubic yards in a dump truck, we're talking literally thousands of dump trucks hauled off that sediment off that valley floor. We don't have that luxury in a lot of our projects. We're working within an easement area, and the cost of removing this sediment is just not really practical in most of our projects. I know maybe Mike Osterholm has talked to the group before, and Mike is I've been to Mike's project. I like Mike's project, and Mike tends to preach about using shaping and using vegetation to stabilize these banks. But Mike has done the cultural sediment, removed most of the cultural sediment, so that that floodplain has got an easy connection to the stream. And although I think that project is great, it's not a project that we typically, it's not a project that we can use. We can't use that as an example for most of our restoration projects. Most of our restoration projects look like this before we start. And actually, this is already with most of the shallow rooted trees that have been removed. This happens to be Pickwick. The contractor has already come in here and removed the shallow rooted trees, the box elders. And as in most projects, we leave the hardwood trees in place. So I think there was actually a grove of walnuts on this that we definitely left, but you can see the banks in the background. You can see that they're probably 8 to 10 feet, and probably 5 to 6 feet of that is sediment that came off of that ridge tops. So this is before, and then this is after. Bank sloping, bank stabilization is always key in any project we do, whether it's in Minnesota or Wisconsin. It's the number one practice that we do, that it costs a fair amount of dollars to do, but it is always part of our project. And then obviously habitat. And we feel that overhead cover is usually the lacking feature. And we can do that with a lunker structure, which I'll show shortly, but we've seen a 10-fold increase in a number of projects where we've done pre-survey work and post-survey work several years later. So we're talking a 10-fold increase of about 300 fish per mile to 3,000 fish per mile. And there are places like on Trout Run and other streams where we probably get more like 4,000 fish per mile. But habitat is what we're after, but bank stabilization is always a key part of our projects. And our projects are very attractive to a wide group. The bank stability, the water quality, tying up the phosphorus that's in the soil. And we've done some economic studies showing how good this is for the local economy. On an annual basis in the driftlets, it's over $1 billion a year. So our projects are, whether you're in Wisconsin or Minnesota or Iowa, they have many benefits. Now, I said we used to do all our projects involve bank stabilization, and this is I think when people think of bank stabilization, this is what they picture as rock riprap, to the stream bed all the way to the top. And it's, there's still some of this going on, maybe where we're protecting houses or something like that. But typically, the rock is usually 1 to 2 feet above the stream, the surface water, and then we slope those banks back as far as we can. And then obviously we cover the rock. Now there's multiple ways to do bank stabilization, and we've tried a number of different restoration techniques throughout the Driftless. One of them is tow wood, where if we were going into a wooded repairing corridor and there's access to a lot of wood, we use that wood as part of the protection of that tow. This was a project we did in Minnesota. Minnesota TU did, maybe John's there, he can tell me, but I can't remember whether the DNR did this or a private contractor, but this is down, I think that's the golf course in the background, but it's a combination of tow wood and rock, and then the wood also provides habitat for both macroinvertebrates and trout. Usually when we think of trees and woods, and there's a lot of talk of using trees for stabilizing banks, that just hasn't been the case that we've seen wherever you are in the Driftless. Typically, these areas, the livestock have been pulled out and the box elders come in and they're shallow rooted and they tend to lean over the streams. And then on the first event that comes through, these trees get tipped over, the roots are exposed, and we see really a lot of erosion that's occurring. So almost all projects, box elder trees are one of the trees that we go after to remove. And one of the things we work with chapters is work days to go in and try to get those box elders out of that repairing corridor. Your chapter is close to Kiaptawish, and I know Randy Arnold there with the Kiaptawish chapter is the box elder king, and they have work days all the time over in that area to on the riparian area to remove those box elders. So an opportunity for your chapter members to get involved right across the river too. We've invested in some technology the last year here. I'm not going to claim that we're experts on it. One of them is a time-lapse camera. We've started a YouTube channel, and we hope to develop this YouTube channel to show both contractors and chapters or landowners, what's involved in a project. This happens to be a time-lapse shot of the Department of Natural Resources fish habitat crew over here in Wisconsin, utilizing wood as part of the project. You can see the rock going in at the toe for the first 2 feet. It's on what we call a 1 to 2 slope, 2 feet back for every 1 foot high, and then it'll slope the bank back on top. So we're hoping to have Dusty and Paul Cron on our staff in the future use this time-lapse camera to show how a lot of the structures, the lunker structures go in, what a Vortex Weir is called and so forth, and use this as part of our educational outreach to our contractors. This is kind of what we're shooting for on most of our projects. This is just after a large rain event. You can see how the grass is laid down. We often talk about making a connection between the stream and the floodplain. So when that water rises, it doesn't hit the side of the banks. It goes over the banks, connects to the floodplain, and then comes back down. And in this case, you can see that we had a flood event. It went up probably 4 or 5 feet. In fact, you can actually see, because the water came up and spread out, we had deposition in this picture. You can see the sediment in the grass. And that's why managed grazing, working with livestock, is beneficial for most of our projects where it's the livestock is managed and they don't overgraze. We've done some work in Minnesota on Trout Run, where we worked with a landowner to manage grazing on that upper part. And he's done an excellent job of utilizing the resource, getting the livestock in there, which helps keep back the box elder trees and the invasives, and actually makes it easier to fish. But and actually lengthens the life of our projects by keeping those box elders out. So today, this is kind of what a typical project looks like. We are constantly tweaking our seeding mixtures, adding pollinator plants. We're creating deep pools, overhead cover for adult trout, bank stabilization, and something new in the last 10 years we've been doing is trying to incorporate habitat for the non-game species. And I mean frogs, turtles, snakes, other creatures that use that riparian corridor. And we've developed a habitat guide that we've shared with chapters, people doing stream restoration work on how to incorporate this non-game habitat work into the projects. And in a lot of the recent projects done in Minnesota through the Lessard SAMs, we've seen a lot of good non-game habitat work go in. I don't know if you noticed it or not, but there's been shallow wetland scrapes, backwater areas, even snake hibernaculus. So I've been real pleased with how that's taken off from the Driftless. So let's try and use a little bit of technology here. One of the other tools that we've got is a drone. And this is a before shot on Weister Creek here in Southwest Wisconsin, a project completed by the La Crosse Fish Habitat crew. So with a drone, you basically can walk on water. And so this is a before, and I've got an after to follow, but you can just go up the stream here. Here's a good place of an example. Look at the roots on this bank here. I mean, a lot of times we hear people say, oh, but those trees, they stabilize the banks. You need those roots. Well, we really have not seen that as the case at all. In fact, the trees are shallow. They tip over, the root gets exposed, the bank gets washed out. They shade out the grasses, which help stabilize the banks. And so for the most part, we have not had a lot of good luck with trees, especially on the banks. So the trees are removed in almost all cases when that's right on the bank. You can see they've already come in here and compiled the rock for the project. This is another thing I want to point out is that we see every spring this massive slumping of soil off of these vertical banks. We've done a number of studies in watersheds where 80% of the sediment that reaches the stream isn't coming from the crop fields, isn't coming from construction, it's coming from right off the banks. So like I said, every one of our projects is to slope these banks back and stabilize the banks. Okay, let's go right on up this stream here. So you can see the banks here. The banks are not, I would say about average. They're probably 4 to 6 feet. Remember that island there. They're going to do some habitat work around this island. I'll say that one thing, the stream maybe is a little bit wider than what we'd like to see. Although at this point you can see the rubble on the bottom of the stream. In all projects, whether they're Lessard SAMs projects in Minnesota or Wisconsin, we try to flush that sediment. We've got great rubble, great places for spawning, and we try to keep that rubble free and clear of sediment. And actually, this corner we're coming up, it actually looks kind of stable. That was a project that when I worked for a Vernon County office, we used to do stream, we called it stream restoration work back then too, but basically we would address just the corners where the erosion mostly occurred. And so back in 1990, we did a project on the stream and rocked this corner, and it's still stable as you can see today. So even in the next video that I'm going to show you, they didn't touch this corner because it still remains stable. Okay, this is afterwards. A little darker than the first. Sorry about that. This is the first practice that's been installed. I don't know if you can see my marker or not, but this is what they call a Vortex Weir. It points upstream and the water comes down. And when it hits that Vortex Weir, it creates a right angle and it scours out a permanent pool. So besides overhead cover like lunker structures, another way to provide overhead cover or depth for adult trout is by creating permanent deep pools. The cross office really is into the non-game habitat, and they, right off the bat here, they created this shallow wetland area, not wetland area, but this side channel. This is quite shallow, but it'll be used by amphibians, shorebirds, and other creatures along that riparian corridor. You'll also notice the banks now are shaped and seeded. They used cool season grasses on the banks, good sod forming grasses, and then on the valley floor there, it's all prairie. This is on the Kickapoo Valley Reserve where they can manage the prairie, so it's worth their time to put in prairies. We've tried to incorporate as much native vegetation as we can in all of our projects, regardless of whether it's Minnesota or Wisconsin. But the fact is, if you're not going to manage it, these prairie plants are just not going to survive without cutting or burning on almost an annual basis. So again, I refer to the Iowa project, where he's used prairies to stabilize the banks. That again, where we don't manage the banks, where we don't have access to those easements to do that kind of burning and so forth, it doesn't survive the stream bottoms. La Crosse DNR does a lot of wood in stream, and you can see they leave the edges kind of rough. Macroinvertebrate attachments. Here's that island I talked about earlier, and they've kind of directed the flow to the left side and the right side. They've created some slack water, possibly a basking log for snakes or turtles. And then it's coming up on our corner there. You can see where they didn't touch that corner because it was still stable. But you can see now even now we slope our banks a lot more on our corners than what we used to. I was a little disappointed at the water quality on this when I first after I noticed this video, I realized how dirty the water was looking. And that's because the habitat crew was working actually 2 bends above me. So normally this is a crystal clear typical spring-fed driftless stream. So that's why the water is a little murky, because they were working right above me as I was taking this video. So we're constantly looking at new techniques, tweaking them, depending on where we're in the watershed, what our species is that we're targeting, all takes into factor what we're designing for. Always looking at some new promising techniques. Your car bodies are being used to stabilize the bank. No, I'm just kidding. We don't ever use car bodies to stabilize the bank. Although there is a project on Garvin, if you've ever fished, I'm sure a lot of you have fished Garvin, where the railroad actually used trucks, old trucks to stabilize the banks, but we would never use tires or car bodies to stabilize the banks. I only say that because at one time I gave this speech and I was try to make this a joke, and it was afterwards someone came up and approached me and says, "I can't believe the DNR would give you a permit to put those car bodies in the stream." So no, we do not use car bodies. So what we do use for habitat really depends on where we're at in the reach of the watershed, and really what what our objectives are. If we're focusing on brown trout, which here in the driftless we do focus a lot on. A lot of our national office focuses on native species, the brook trout, and we too like brook trout projects, but the brown trout are here. They're a great recreational fish, and they're not going anywhere. And so we can really increase the capacity and do great habitat projects for brown trout. So we will continue to do brown trout projects. We're still doing a lot of science on brown trout, what what's the best habitat for brown trout. Typically overhead cover, like the lunker structures, and I'll show some pictures of that if you're not familiar with that. Using the roots of trees, Vortex Weirs, all the different kinds of habitat practices that we typically use in streams seem to really benefit the brown trout. And this is a lunker structure. Sometimes we face it with the front of it with a rock. Sometimes we face it with logs. It's an oak structure, and once it's placed underwater, it's basically rot resistant. And this really is one of the key structures to increase the carrying capacity of trout. If you're not familiar with lunkers, lunkers is an acronym for Little Underwater Neighborhood Keepers Encompassing Rheotactic Salmonids. So I know you wanted to write that down. I think that was written down on a bar napkin to start with. I think that's how that whole thing evolved. But our chapters get very involved when putting these lunker structures together. In Wisconsin, we have regular little SWAT teams, and I know you do in Minnesota too. I know Hiawatha has got all the equipment to put these things together. And I think we talked about this today, John and Dusty and I, about trying to get the chapters more involved in putting, a number of lunker structures in each of our projects. We've got a couple projects coming up this year on West Beaver and Winnebago, and we're looking at putting lunkers, not a lot of lunkers, but putting a few lunkers in and getting the chapters engaged and helping us put those structures in. If you got beginner fishing, people fishing that are fishing for the first time, or kids, or heck, I should say kids. I love to fish them myself. These structures hold 40, 50 fish per structure. They're just phenomenal for increasing the capacity of the stream. The other habitat project or practice that I was talking about are the Vortex Weirs, this kind of a V structure pointed upstream, and to create a permanent scoured pool. So sometimes we can make them elongated, like this lower left one makes it more like a riffle. We very seldom use wood anymore, but most of the time we use rocks. And for less than a couple $1,000s, we can take a straight stretch of stream that was kind of boring and wide and shallow and create some really nice deep pools. For brook trout, the thinking has been not the overhead cover, more on the pool riffles scenario. I think we're still, this is all the science is always being studied on this. Some of the latest literature I've read about is it's really the cold temperatures, the really headwater streams where you've got a lot of spring influence, the cold temperatures that favor the brooks and not the browns. So we try to create barriers in the stream so that remove the browns from above and try to keep it just a brook trout. But if there are browns in there during flooding events or whatever, they tend to make their way up and are hard to keep out. So this is a brook trout stream over in Wisconsin. In fact, I know the fish biologists wish people would keep some of the brook trout because there are so many brook trout in this stream. It also has a great population of tiger trout. If you've never seen one before, this is a stream where it is known for a strong population of tiger trout. So a pretty interesting fish. I want to talk a little bit more about bank stabilization and our projects and how that's changing and always evolving, especially with the high volume flood events that we've got. To give you one idea of the amount of sediment that can be displaced into a stream in a single event. This was down on Rush Creek just before a year prior before we were going to do the project. That post to the left there's got a white kind of a tag on top, and you see that shrub on the end of the fence line there. So that was the summer before, and this was the spring after. Now that fence line is now on the inside bend, and we've lost all that sediment. And that's probably about a 350-foot stretch, or 350-foot length of bank, and probably 8 to 10, maybe even 12 feet high in some places. I estimated over 3,000 cubic yards of sediment in just one event was taken out of that one bend. And again, if you think of 12 yards, maybe 18 yards in a large dump truck, 3,000 cubic yards in one event, that's hundreds of dump trucks like backing up to the stream and depositing into the stream. So this saying, Houston, we have a problem, is the problem is in the Driftless is these large flooding events. 10 years ago, was it 2000, more than that, 2007, 2008. This is the Root River. We had that large event, and we thought, well, that's once in a lifetime, thank God, that we won't have to see that again. But now it's like every year in some place in the Driftless, we're seeing, well, a large event. This was Ontario here in Wisconsin over here, where I'm in the county where I live. Almost 16 inches of rain in 24 hours. Coon Valley, another event, again in Vernon County here, about 8 miles from where I'm sitting, 18 inches of water. Some of you are familiar with the West Fork, an avalanche, a campground where a lot of people come to fish, 15-inch event. And so these are reoccurring themes. Again, Spring Coulee, Vernon County again, where I live, just down the road. And this was that project, prior to that event. This was a Department of Natural Resources project. The La Crosse Fish Habitat crew did this project. It's been there probably 25, 30 years on a great, it's both brook and brown trout stream. And after that one event, what we saw was everything was taken out. A lot of debris, a lot of material moved down through that system, a lot of bank erosion. This is the same stream looking downstream. This is looking upstream. But these large events have really got our attention. We almost know now, because of the gradient, the valley, and some of the past experience where these areas are. And it's just not our stream projects that are taking it on the nose. I guess these are a lot of you from Vernon County, because that's where I live. But this was a large flood control dam that the Natural Resources Conservation Service built back in the mid-'80s. We lost 8 of these large flood control dams here in the Timber Coulee system here in Southwest Wisconsin about 4 years ago. And that is more flood control dam structures and anywhere else in the nation that have been taken out in one event than anywhere else. And we had a lot of people from the national headquarters from the Natural Resources Conservation Service that came out to see what the heck actually happened. But these large events, I think if there's anything we can agree is that we're going to see more, and we're just going to have to be aware of them, where these problematic areas are when we do our projects. We have areas in the stream. This is Timber Coulee. This is downstream of those flood control dams. This area received the same amount of 18 inches of rain. This whole valley floor was literally covered, but you can see, the grass was laid down and everything works just fine. And we find this in Minnesota, Wisconsin, Iowa, that those upper watersheds got hit hard, and we lost a lot of our habitat, but there's a place in that watershed where everything's working just great. This is another where it received that 16 inches of rain. This is that same stream that I showed you just moments earlier with a video, the Weister Creek, and you can see how it held up just fine. But it's less grade here, bigger floodplain, and so everything worked just fine. I'm not going to go into this too much here at all, but it just all correlates with, narrow valleys, high gradient, and that's when you get the stream power, and that's when we see a lot of devastation. So this headwater work, small streams have big issues. It's the gradient, it's the bed load that moves down, the shifting of the channel. It's actually the lower left there, you can't see it, but there's a lunker structure there. This was actually one of my projects just south of Rubble here. This is an area where we've done probably 4 staff from our field office did 4 projects, and all 4 projects have been washed out with these large events. Narrow valleys, high gradient, a lot of bed load, projects that have been stable for 25 years, and then you get a 15-inch rain, something that we've never seen before, and it's devastation to our project. So the thinking is we got to realize where these problematic areas are, and maybe we're not gonna go back with the same amount of effort and detail like we have in the past. We're not going to put any lunker structures in those areas. We're going to try to keep our costs low. We may be working with existing materials, and with the idea that we may have to come back and bring that channel back, that braided channel back into the a single stream after another storm event. So, and frankly, a lot of these areas that were really blown out, we're still thinking about how we're going to go back and work on those streams again, because they're so volatile. And if they were our only trout stream in the Driftless, we'd probably be working on them every year. But when we've got areas in the middle of the watershed that are sweet spots that we know everything we do will work, those are the areas that we're going to focus on. So I know when John Mancheski pulls together projects for it in Minnesota, each project is looked at in advance, to see, is this, are we spending our money wisely here? We don't want to see a project fail, and if it's way down in the watershed where you got 12 or 14-foot banks, you're going to spend $500,000 to $1 million to improve a quarter-mile reach. And so you get much more bang for the buck, working in another part of the watershed. So, we're blessed in the Driftless. We do have a lot of area to work. We've got over 1,400 miles of public access. So this is just one of the things that we think about every time we go out to work on a project is this the most cost effective? Are we going to get the best bang for our buck? Are we going to build a resilient project here that we're not going to have to come back in 10 years and fix again? This is something that I can't stress enough, that every project, when we walked the projects this spring in Minnesota, we had engineers, we had DNR staff, we had probably 8 or 9 people walking that stream with probably over 100 years worth of, easily over 100 years worth of experience, all adding input into that project so that we got the best project that we could possibly get with the money spent. I've only got a few more slides. I just want to, often people want to know what happens to the fishery in these big flooding events. And both Minnesota and Wisconsin have studied this. And the adult fish seem to be able to hunker down and find maybe some of the habitat, for example, some of the habitat work we've put in behind rock or wooden structures. But it's the young fish, the fry, that kind of really take it on the nose. So we may lose an age class of fish, in those big events. I think I've got a couple more slides. I wanted to stress that we're also including a lot of non-game habitat into our projects these days, both pollinator plants for terrestrial, butterflies and birds, and then frogs and turtles, snakes. Anytime we can work with a species in that riparian corridor and help increase the carrying capacity of that critter, we're going to try to find a way to do that. And I think it's really made our projects much more attractive. I'm sure you're like me, when you're out there fishing, you enjoy seeing the birds that are use the riparian corridor, or maybe not the snakes, but all the other creatures that use that riparian corridor. So a lot of this is you know, John and I were talking about this today, is not to take a picture right after the project was completed. It looks, I mean, you can see there's still straw on the side, but instead of pinching up the whole stream and making it look like a single channel, we use root wads to increase the depth in the middle of the thalweg, in the middle of that stream, bounce that stream back and forth. And then what's going to happen below those structures is that's going to fill them with sediment. And so that'll create additional habitat for non-game shorebirds, frogs, and at the same time will help us get the depth and the cover that we want for the fisheries. So, so we're always experimenting. You might come across the structure sometime when you're fishing and think, what is the purpose of that, or what is that? Some of these are experimental. Some of these work real well. Some of these haven't. But if there's anything that we found is that when we've got a contractor down there working in that riparian corridor to create a structure like you see here, or to put in a root wad or something like that, just takes a matter of minutes. So we can be very cost effective for putting in some of these non-game habitat practices. And it has also been a way to bring additional dollars into the Driftless for our stream projects. 2 years ago, I wrote a $9 million farm bill award for the Driftless for stream restoration that emphasized non-game habitat. And it was the non-game habitat that really got us the award. So 3 of the projects that we did over in Minnesota, we offset some of the costs, some of the state costs, by using farm bill these dollars, and I think it makes our projects better. It shows to the state that we're not just using state dollars on our projects, and it helps us build partnerships. So we'll continue to tweak our non-game habitat practices, but don't be surprised when you're walking a stream sometime and you'll see a little wetland area, on the side, or some of these structures, and we're trying to address some of the other critters that are in that riparian corridor. So I think that's my last slide. This conservation warden's writing up this bear for telling him that illiteracy is no excuse for breaking the law. And then probably my classic one that I use in almost all my presentation is a sign. I think it's off of Hay Creek, where the landowner says that the fish, the anglers are welcome to use fish as pasture, but they need to be able to cross the pasture in 3.7 seconds because the bull can do it in 3.8. So Jeff, that ends my presentation. I'd be glad to answer any more questions. I had hoped to show tonight, but my presentation went a little long, but look for in the future. I think, John and I were talking to Dustin, and we've got a drone now in Minnesota, and we're hoping to capture some more pre and post drone videos of the projects. And I think that'll be of interest to the chapter in the future. So if there's any questions, I'd be glad to take them at this time.
Thanks, Jeff. There are absolutely no questions in the chat. So if anyone has any questions, now is a great time to put it in chat. We still got about 20 minutes here. Anyone in person have any questions for Jeff?
I just can't emphasize enough that, stream restoration work has been occurring in the Driftless for over 40 years, but it has changed so much, and so much actually in the last 10 years because of the need to build them more resilient because of the volume of rain that we get in these floods. So there's quite a SWAT team whether it's a project in Wisconsin or a project in Minnesota that walks these streams to really get everybody the best project that we possibly can have. I mean, money is limited. We've got a lot of miles to do, and we want to make these projects the best we can possibly do and stretch that money out as much as we can. So I'll end her there.
All right, Jeff, we got 2 questions for sure.
I'm not answering any questions from John back there.
It's not John.
No. Do you want me to go in the chat box here? I can't, I don't
No.
see them.
No, they're in person here, so they're not going to be in chat. Can you
okay.
hear it or no?
No, I didn't hear. I'm sorry, I didn't hear it.
Okay, we're getting to the question. I'll let you know what it is in 1 second.
Okay.
Okay, so the question is, it sounds like there was a study from Duluth and people from UW-Madison doing some stream restoration work. Haven't either of those studies or groups been able to provide any insight on the effectiveness of stream restoration?
Yeah, in fact, I just saw the one that the Duluth one is going to be doing. And John probably could add to this too. Looks like it's something that's going to be happening over the next 4 years, 4 to 5 years. I know there has been some studies out of Madison, what they call Newsom funds. University of Wisconsin-Madison has been doing them up here, actually in the county where I live, looking at trees, and the effectiveness of trees in the riparian corridor. And I think, and a lot of those studies have been done, and I think they're coming to the same conclusions that we are, that that the shallow root trees are problematic, but not nothing that we haven't really seen before. So the Duluth study, I think, is just starting, and maybe it hasn't even started yet, but it's over the next 4 years, my understanding.
All right, next question. How do you determine stream width for stream restoration?
Yeah, there's a lot of literature out there, fluvial geomorphology and all that kind of a thing. But to be honest with you, most of the practitioners will walk that stream corridor, that section of stream corridor, and they'll come across several areas where it's stable and where we're getting the amount of sediment removal that we want. So there's like a stretch, several stretches that they use as a guide and say, gosh, 10 foot here looks to be about the right width. We got banks are stable. We're seeing the sediment flushed out. And so we actually walk that segment of the stream to find those sections to determine the proper width.
Have you watched the Decoding the Driftless documentary? And if so, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, actually, I think in the first one, we were part of that presentation. I think both of those are pretty good. I mean, it really goes to show how unique this area is. When we talk about removing trees in the riparian corridor, like the box elders and stuff. I mean, a lot of the national projects that they're planting thousands and thousands of trees, kind of a thing. So it just points out how unique the driftless is. And so I think it's a very, very well, the photography is fantastic. I enjoyed both of them. I think the trouble is when you hear from one practitioner that this is the way to do stream restoration, it's going to be a problem, because where you're at in the watershed, what your goals are, you know, what the soils are, all the projects are different. So when we approach a project in Wisconsin or Minnesota, each one is approached individually. So, you know, like I said, Mike Osterholm's a great guy. He's got a great project, but you know, that blueprint for what he did down in Iowa is not something that we can use in almost any of our projects.
Comment was a little surprised trees are not effective in floodplain control. Are there any tree species that work for this?
You know, in flood control, I mean, we may, as much as I say about taking trees out of the riparian corridor, and we've always left trees that were hardwoods and so forth in riparian corridor if they weren't on the bank. But we are looking at some of these upper reaches. I was working with the Natural Resources Conservation Service this year on a new standard design on these upper reaches where we may go in and plant trees to you know, stop some of that debris, slow that movement down, and help control that. So we may see planting trees as one of the solutions in these upper reaches.
I'm gonna see if there's any questions in person. Otherwise, I'll go back to the chat questions. Anyone else here in person at all?
And I think you'll see in some of our projects, even in Minnesota, this year, we have talked about, you know, replacing some of the box elders and so forth that we take out and maybe coming back and planting a few trees. And that would be definitely something that we would engage the volunteers in, and another opportunity to engage volunteers. Not a lot of trees, but, you know, replacing some of the trees, so.
Next question, given the apparent growth in trout fishing, are you seeing a corresponding increase in available funding for projects?
You know, you know, it's variable between states. You know, you're very, very fortunate in Minnesota with your outdoor heritage program. You know, and John is very careful to use those dollars wisely because that's such a great program. In Wisconsin here, we use a lot of the farm bill dollars that I got for the state, and the economic studies that we've shown, the water quality improvements that we've made, increase in the non-game species has been very attractive to a lot of our partners. So we are seeing more money coming into the area because of the success we've had.
All right, last question I got for right now. Do you ever add rubble to the stream bed for spawning trout?
You know, we have those so-called Vortex Weirs, and our stream crossings are great areas that you know, we try to increase the spawning. Whenever we do a stream project and we come across a riffle or a spawning area, those areas are pretty much left untouched. You know, we don't touch them at all. And we have in some areas brought in what we thought was appropriate size to increase the spawning area for trout. It's one of the discussions we have every time we walk a project. You know, what's the limiting factor here? Is it spawning? Is it overhead cover? You know, and so those are things that we look at when we do a walkover with a group. And it's really great to have. It's really fun to walk with about 6 or 7 people that have done projects like this. You know, we all bring in our expertise, and there's, you know, no two projects are ever the same. Nobody would design a project the same. So it's always good to get input and in more ways than one to skin a cat kind of a thing. So.
Great. Last call for questions. We got one more here in person. Give me
this
one
is
second.
tough to do without a beer in my hand and all this talking, you know.
Question is, do the big flooding events have any effect on the overall temperature of the water?
You know, I would say, you know, one of the dilemmas with these big flooding events is that we're seeing these streams are braided. They get wide and shallow again. So I would have to say that there are areas of the stream that are affected by these flooding events where we see the widening of the stream, shallow and braided, where it could have some influence on the temperature of that stream. But for the most part, with all the rain that we've had in the last 10 years, we've seen a significant increase in base flow. And so our stream temperatures have been really steady or improving. So.
All right, final call for questions. Any last minute ones from anyone?
Time for a beer.
All right, hearing no additional questions. Oh, last minute question. Is there a common reason for the redirection of stream flow between alternate parallel channels? I've seen Rush Creek flow change. Do you need me to repeat that?
Yeah, I'm just trying to understand it. We've done a lot of projects on Rush Creek, but the flow, the change in flow.
Yeah, is there a reason that stream flows are redirected? Is my understanding.
Well, the Rush Creek one, I mean, we put a fair amount of meanders back into that stream. Maybe that's what they're getting at. I did have some video tonight that I was going to show, but would show that on a lot of these projects, you know, we recreate the meanders in those projects. A lot of the streams were straightened at one time, and so we tend to try to put those meanders back into the stream. So as far as flow, I think I'm sure Minnesota's like no different than Wisconsin, but we have seen an increase in overall flow, base flow in these streams because of all the water recharge that we're seeing from these events. Anybody, you know, anytime, Jeff, I'd say too, I think my email is pretty easy to find. If anybody has a question, don't ever hesitate to give me a call. I always love to discuss projects, and if someone sees something and I wonder what the hell we were thinking there, I'd be glad to talk about it. So.
All right, you want to give your email now, or what's the easiest way to find it?
It's just what you see on the screen there, Jeff.Hastings at, you know, TU for Trout Unlimited. So Jeff.Hastings at TU.org. So it's pretty easy. If you Google Tadair on you know, my name will come up, and don't hesitate to shoot me an email. And I love to talk projects. So
great. Well, thanks very much, Jeff, for the presentation. Very, very informative, and I speak for the group saying we all appreciate it.
Anytime. Thanks for the opportunity.
All right.
Have a nice Thanksgiving.
All right, everyone online. I'm going to get a last screenshot to see who is all on the meeting, and then we're going to log off, just so I know for the Flybox drawing, if any of you don't have a first and last name and you win, it might be a bit difficult for me to tell who it is, but we'll reach out to the winner via email. We got all of those in our system. So have a great night and great holiday weekend. Thanks.